Guts from Berserk starts with the worst possible beginning. Born from his dead mother's corpse after she was hanged, he literally enters the world through death. That's not just tragic backstory. That's fate marking him from birth. His childhood gets worse from there. Raised by mercenaries who treat him like garbage, abused by his guardian Gambino, then hunted like a criminal when he finally fights back. All before he turns 15. The question is, how do you survive that? By finding family. The cruel irony hits when Guts finally finds what feels like family. The Band of the Hawk becomes his brotherhood, Griffith becomes his friend, and for once, Guts belongs somewhere. But here's the thing about Guts' tragedy. Every moment of happiness gets ripped away in the most brutal way possible. During the eclipse, Griffith sacrifices their entire crew to demons to become a god hand member. Guts watches his friends get torn apart. He loses an eye and an arm trying to save them. Then Griffith forces him to watch as he assaults Casca, the woman Guts loves, leaving her mind completely shattered. The branding curse means demons hunt him every single night. No rest, no peace, just endless fighting. Guts builds a cannon for an arm and swings a sword bigger than most people because stopping means the darkness wins. What makes this so tragic is that Guts keeps going not because he thinks he'll win, but because giving up would dishonor everyone he's lost. Hyakkimaru from Dororo faces a different kind of theft. Before he's even born, his father Daigo makes a deal with demons. Trade anything for prosperity, and that anything turns out to be his newborn son's body parts. Hyakkimaru enters the world without skin, limbs, eyes, nose, or ears. Imagine being robbed of your humanity before you can even experience it. But here's the kicker. His first kill wasn't just a win. It was the day he felt the sun on his skin for the very first time. And the second? He heard the sound of his own battle cry. But this is where the tragedy compounds. Here's where the cruel irony kicks in. As Hyakkimaru kills demons and reclaims his stolen body parts, the people in his father's domain start suffering. Their prosperity was built on his sacrifice. Every piece of himself he takes back makes innocent people's lives worse. So his quest for wholeness becomes a moral nightmare. Is one person's right to their body worth the suffering of thousands? The tragedy deepens because each recovered sense overwhelms him. When he gains hearing, the world becomes too loud. When he gets his voice back, he can only scream. Learning to be human while fighting to become human creates this impossible cycle where every victory feels like another kind of loss. Violet Evergarden represents tragedy through dehumanization. Raised as a child soldier, she knew only orders and killing. People literally compared her to a dog, existing solely to serve her master. The war strips away her childhood, her ability to feel, her connection to anything resembling normal human experience. The real tragedy starts when the war ends, and she loses Major Gilbert, the only person who ever treated her as human. Without orders to follow, Violet becomes completely lost. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you've never actually felt joy, or sadness, or love. That was Violet's reality. Her next mission wasn't to fight a war, but to solve the riddle of her own heart. She doesn't understand emotions, relationships, or basic human interactions. Her journey as an auto-memory doll, helping others write letters, becomes this beautiful but heartbreaking process of learning what was stolen from her. Every episode shows her struggling with concepts that come naturally to everyone else. Love, loss, family bonds. She carries the guilt of everyone she killed during the war while slowly discovering she can bring joy and comfort to others. The cruel irony is that becoming human means understanding the weight of what she did when she wasn't allowed to be human. What connects these three warriors is how their physical losses reflect deeper emotional wounds. Guts loses his eye and arm, but gains the ability to see truth about friendship and betrayal. Hyakkimaru reclaims his body, but discovers the moral complexity of existing in a world built on suffering. Violet regains her humanity, but must confront the weight of her actions when she had none. Their tragedies aren't just about what happened to them. They're about what was taken from them before they could choose. Guts never got a normal childhood. Hyakkimaru never got a complete body. Violet never got the chance to develop naturally as a person. Yet all three refused to let these thefts define their limits. The pattern here reveals something crucial about anime's approach to tragedy. These characters don't just endure suffering, they transform it into strength while carrying the scars forever. Guts swings his massive sword with one arm because he has to. Hyakkimaru fights demons to reclaim what's his by right. Violet learns to write letters that heal others' hearts because she understands loss. Their persistence in the face of impossible odds makes them heroic, but their wounds make them human. That combination creates characters who feel both larger than life and completely relatable. We see ourselves in their struggles to keep going when everything seems hopeless. The cost of reclaiming what was stolen is immense. But there's another level of tragedy: the heroes who choose to pay the ultimate cost with their love and reputation. Let's talk about the self-sacrificing heroes. Itachi Uchiha from Naruto embodies the cruelest kind of tragedy. The kind where doing the right thing destroys everything you love. Born into the Uchiha clan during rising tensions with Konoha village, Itachi witnessed war's horrors as a child. That early exposure to violence shaped his pacifist worldview, making what he'd later be forced to do even more devastating. The impossible choice came when his clan planned to overthrow the village. Civil war would devastate Konoha and potentially trigger another great ninja war. The village leadership gave Itachi an ultimatum: prevent the rebellion by massacring his entire clan, or watch everything burn. He was barely a teenager facing a decision no adult should make. Here's the cruel irony that defines Itachi's tragedy. His only friend Shisui Uchiha believed they could stop the coup without violence. Shisui had a jutsu that could rewrite minds, potentially ending the conflict peacefully. But Danzo stole one of Shisui's eyes and forced him into a corner. Shisui gave his remaining eye to Itachi and jumped off a cliff. That moment showed Itachi that no one else was coming to save them. If peace was going to happen, he'd have to become the villain. In that moment, a future Hokage died, and the village's darkest, most necessary villain was born. He had to become the monster to save his brother. So he did. One night, Itachi killed his entire clan, sparing only his little brother Sasuke. But not just sparing him, trauma-forging him into a future weapon. Itachi told Sasuke to get strong, hate him, and kill him one day. The psychological manipulation was calculated. By making himself the target of Sasuke's hatred, Itachi gave his brother a purpose and protected him from the truth that would destroy his worldview. The tragedy deepens because Itachi spent the rest of his shortened life dying from terminal illness, living as a missing nin, branded a traitor and kinslayer while secretly working to protect the village that ordered his family's death. He joined the Akatsuki, not for their goals but to spy on their plans from the inside. Every day was another layer of lies, another sacrifice of his own happiness for others' safety. When he was resurrected during the Fourth Great Ninja War, Itachi used the opportunity to fix everything. He told Sasuke the truth, broke free from the reanimation jutsu, and ended the cycle of lies that ruined their lives. Because Itachi never wanted power, revenge, or recognition. He wanted peace and was willing to burn down his own life to give it to everyone else. Edward Elric from Full Metal Alchemist carries a different kind of sacrificial burden. His tragedy begins with love. After losing his mother Trisha when he was just a child, Edward tried to fill the father-shaped hole their dad left behind. When desperate grief drove him and his brother Alphonse to attempt human transmutation, the consequences shattered their world. The truth took Edward's left leg as payment for trying to bring back the dead. Alphonse lost his entire body. In a panic to save his brother's soul, Edward sacrificed his right arm to bind Alphonse to a suit of armor. At 11 years old, Edward had lost his mother, father, and limbs, and was responsible for his brother's loss of humanity. 11 years old. Max-level guilt. What makes Edward's story particularly tragic is the weight of responsibility crushing his shoulders. Despite being a child, he became the man of the house when their father abandoned them. Then he became responsible for Alphonse's condition after their failed transmutation. His entire journey is driven by guilt and the desperate need to restore what he destroyed. The cruel irony hits every time Edward looks at his brother. That empty suit of armor is a constant reminder of his failure. Every clang of metal, every moment Alphonse can't eat, sleep, or feel anything physical reinforces Edward's guilt. His automail limbs hurt constantly, but that pain is nothing compared to knowing he condemned his brother to a hollow existence. Edward's tragedy isn't just about what he lost. It's about carrying the burden of his choices while trying to maintain hope for both of them. He throws himself into dangerous situations, pushes his body beyond its limits, and makes increasingly desperate bargains because stopping means accepting that he destroyed his brother's life forever. Homura Akemi, from Puella Magi. Madoka Magica faces the most psychologically devastating form of sacrifice. Originally a shy, weak girl recovering from a long hospital stay, Homura's life changed when she met Madoka Kaname, who showed her kindness and saved her from a witch. When Madoka died fighting Walpurgisnacht, Homura made a wish to redo their meeting and save her friend. That wish trapped Homura in a time loop where she must repeatedly watch Madoka die or become a witch herself. Each reset, Homura remembers everything while everyone else forgets, including Madoka. She becomes stronger, colder, and more calculating with each loop, gradually losing her humanity in desperate attempts to save the one person who showed her kindness. The cruel irony that destroys Homura is that her repeated attempts to save Madoka actually make Madoka's fate worse. Each timeline increases Madoka's potential as a magical girl, making her more valuable to Kyubey and more likely to make a contract. Homura's love becomes a curse. Her determination becomes obsession, and her heroism becomes self-destruction she cannot escape. Hundreds of loops, countless failures, and the gradual erosion of her soul teach Homura that she can never truly save Madoka because her very existence as a magical girl is what dooms her friend. The ultimate tragedy comes when she realizes that saving Madoka would create a paradox. Her sacrifice becomes meaningless, but she cannot stop making it. What connects Itachi, Edward, and Homura is how their love transforms into a source of endless pain. Itachi's love for his brother and village forces him to become their enemy. Edward's love for his brother chains him to a quest that might be impossible. Homura's love for Madoka traps them both in cycles of suffering. Their sacrifices aren't heroic moments that lead to happy endings. They're ongoing wounds that define every aspect of their existence. Yet they continue making these sacrifices because the alternative, letting their loved ones suffer, is unthinkable. The pattern reveals something profound about heroic tragedy. These characters prove that the greatest acts of love often require becoming something you hate. Itachi becomes a killer to preserve peace. Edward becomes reckless to restore his brother. Homura becomes cold to protect warmth. Their persistence transforms sacrifice from a single moment into a way of life. Itachi, Edward, and Homura bore the ultimate external sacrifice, but that pain rarely stays outside. The greatest tragedies are often internal, wearing away at a character's very identity. This leads us to the broken minds. What if the monster you had to fight to save the world was the constant screaming voice inside your own head? That's the tragic burden of Shinji Ikari. Shinji from Neon Genesis Evangelion represents tragedy through psychological realism. Most anime heroes rise to meet impossible challenges, but Shinji often breaks down, runs away, or freezes up. These reactions feel authentic to someone dealing with severe trauma and depression, making his story a meditation on mental illness rather than traditional heroism. Shinji's tragedy begins with abandonment. After his mother Yui's death, his father Gendo dumps him with relatives and disappears. When Gendo suddenly calls him back, it's not out of love or concern. Shinji can pilot Evangelion Unit 01, and that's the only reason he matters. The boy who craves his father's approval discovers he's valued only as a tool. The cruel irony crushing Shinji is that he's trapped in a cycle of seeking approval from people who cannot or will not give it to him. His father sees him as expendable. His fellow pilots are dealing with their own trauma. The adults around him either manipulate him or expect him to save humanity while providing zero emotional support. What makes Shinji's character so tragic is how the weight of potentially saving the world combines with his belief that he's fundamentally unlovable. Every relationship he forms gets tainted by his fear of abandonment and his conviction that people will leave him once they see who he really is. He pilots the Eva not because he wants to be a hero, but because he's terrified of being alone. The psychological horror deepens because Shinji's depression makes even acts of heroism feel hollow and meaningless. He saves people, but it doesn't fill the void inside him. He connects with others, but his mental illness convinces him it won't last. His tragedy isn't just about bad things happening to him. It's about his inability to believe good things can be real or permanent. Shinji's breakdowns, his desperate need for validation, his tendency to hurt others when he's hurting, all feel recognizable to anyone who's struggled with mental health. His story shows how trauma can make you your own worst enemy, turning every victory into evidence that you don't deserve happiness. The true enemy, self-hatred. And it's a battle that only gets worse when you can't share it. Subaru Natsuki, from Re-Zero, faces a unique form of psychological torture. His return by death ability sounds like a blessing, but it's actually a curse that turns death from an ending into another beginning. Most people see death as the ultimate escape from suffering. For Subaru, it's just a reset button that forces him to experience trauma repeatedly. Subaru has died over a dozen times in increasingly brutal ways. Beaten to death with a flail, eaten alive by monsters, frozen solid, stabbed by thugs, decapitated. Each death is traumatic, but the real tragedy is that he must pretend nothing happened when he returns. No one else remembers the previous timeline, so he becomes isolated by his unique knowledge of events that didn't happen. The psychological toll is immense. Subaru has watched loved ones die repeatedly, been tortured, and killed by people who become his friends in other timelines, and must constantly carry the weight of knowing terrible futures he's trying to prevent. Unlike other tragic heroes whose suffering leads to growth, Subaru's suffering is cyclical and seemingly endless. Here's the cruel irony that breaks Subaru's mind. His ability to return by death means he can save people, but only by experiencing their deaths first. He has to watch Emilia get killed to learn how to prevent it. He has to experience Rem's torture to understand the threat. His love for others becomes a source of endless trauma because saving them requires living through their destruction. The isolation amplifies everything. Subaru can't share his burden with anyone because they won't remember or believe him. He becomes the only person who knows how much everyone has suffered across different timelines. That knowledge weighs on him constantly, making every happy moment feel fragile and temporary. What makes Subaru's tragedy particularly devastating is how his immortality through death creates a form of psychological imprisonment. He's trapped in cycles where every solution requires more trauma, every victory costs him pieces of his sanity, and every reset strips away another layer of his humanity. The pattern connecting Shinji and Subaru reveals something crucial about psychological tragedy in anime. Both characters face burdens that isolate them from the people they're trying to protect. Shinji's depression convinces him he's unlovable, so he pushes away the connections that might heal him. Subaru's unique knowledge of death and suffering creates a barrier between him and everyone else. Their mental anguish becomes self-perpetuating. Shinji's fear of abandonment causes him to act in ways that drive people away. Subaru's desperate attempts to save everyone often make situations worse, requiring more resets and more trauma. They're trapped in psychological loops as inescapable as any physical prison. What makes these characters so compelling is how their mental struggles feel authentic. Shinji's depression manifests in ways that feel real, not romanticized. His inability to communicate his needs, his tendency to lash out when he's hurt, his desperate clinging to anyone who shows him kindness, all ring true to actual mental illness. Subaru's trauma responses also feel genuine. His increasing paranoia, his desperate attempts to control every variable, his breakdown when plans fail, all reflect how repeated trauma actually affects the mind. His return by death ability becomes a metaphor for how trauma survivors often feel trapped in cycles of reliving their worst experiences. The cruel irony binding both characters is that their greatest strengths become their greatest weaknesses. Shinji's empathy makes him sensitive to others' pain, but that sensitivity leaves him vulnerable to manipulation and abandonment. Subaru's determination to save everyone drives him to endure endless deaths, but that same determination traps him in cycles of suffering. Their tragedies show how isolation amplifies psychological pain. When you can't share your burden with others, when you believe you're fundamentally different or broken, When every attempt to connect gets twisted by your own damaged mind, the suffering becomes exponentially worse. Yet both characters continue fighting, not because they believe they'll win, but because giving up means letting the darkness consume everything they care about. Shinji keeps piloting the Eva, despite his terror, because he can't bear to let others suffer. Subaru keeps dying and resetting because he can't accept losing the people he loves. Their persistence in the face of psychological torment reveals something profound about human resilience. Even when your own mind becomes your enemy, even when every victory feels hollow, even when the cost of caring seems too high, some part of the human spirit refuses to surrender. So, from stolen bodies to self-inflicted wounds, what does this massive collection of heartbreak actually mean? It all points to the final, unifying pattern of anime tragedy. These 8 characters prove something most people miss about tragedy in anime. Their suffering isn't what makes them heroic. It's what they do with that suffering that transforms them into legends. Guts swings his massive sword because stopping means dishonoring everyone he's lost. Hyakkimaru fights demons to reclaim what's rightfully his, even when it hurts innocent people. Violet learns to write letters that heal hearts because she understands loss. Itachi becomes a villain to preserve peace. Edward carries impossible guilt to restore his brother. Homura traps herself in endless loops to save her friend. Shinji pilots the Eva, despite his terror. Subaru dies repeatedly rather than let others suffer. The pattern nobody talks about is this. Their greatest acts of love become their deepest sources of pain. But they keep choosing love anyway. That's what makes them unforgettable. Their tragedies reveal that heroism isn't about winning. It's about refusing to let darkness consume what you care about, even when that refusal costs everything. These characters show us that sometimes the most human thing you can do is keep going when every rational part of you wants to stop. This journey through stolen bodies, public hatred, and mental loops proves one thing. The most tragic heroes are also the most resilient. They are the ones who, even with a phantom limb, a broken mind, or a curse on their back, keep choosing to love. That's the core of anime tragedy. If you want more deep dives into characters who hit this hard, check out our video breaking down anime characters with the highest kill count. Subscribe for more anime compilation analysis.